Greetings! Welcome to Nina's World. This podcast provides a short respite from the trials and tribulations of everyday life. We're going to step back in time to the 1950s and 60s. And now, our story. Nina and the donut. That's my donut. Nina started third grade with some familiar classmates and some boys and girls who had not been in her second grade classroom. She was happy to be back in school because Nina liked to learn new things, liked to play with friends in the recess yard, and liked to listen to stories being read aloud. This particular day started like every school day. Shouts up the steps to get out of bed, get washed, dressed, and downstairs for breakfast. Boxes of good old Cheerios and Wheaties were on the table next to a stack of bowls and a splay of spoons. Not so much sugar, her mother scolded when Nina was just getting started shoveling it on. And don't leave the milk out, it'll spoil. After chowing down and putting the bowls and spoons in the sink, Nina and her sisters went back upstairs. They wet their toothbrushes so it seemed that they had brushed their teeth, but they were in a hurry, and it was unlikely that their mother would check, but no reason to give her cause to worry, just in case. Using that week's brown bag, Nina put in a sandwich of either bologna and cheese or peanut butter and jelly, or, if available, lunch roll, which was nothing more than a ground-up, pureed, stuck back together conglomeration of anything that loosely identified as ham. The white bread was, white bread, and square and thinly sliced. For dessert, one medium store-bought cookie or two small ones, pre-wrapped and ready to grab and stash in the bag. Off Nina went with her sisters to the Maple Avenue Elementary School. So far, third grade was, more like a trial of endurance. Not much fun in the classroom, but the recess yard was okay. Somehow, Nina never quite gave the right answer when called upon by Miss Johnson, and was never called upon when her hand was raised. She was seated in the front row, probably because she was one of the smallest kids in the class, or, Nina suspected, so that her teacher could keep an eye on her. Nina didn't know why she thought her teacher seemed ready to pounce at any perceived misstep, but that is the way it seemed. Usually it was pretty dull, until the day Patty had a chocolate-covered donut in her lunch bag, and her lunch bag wasn't closed all the way. Nina had to get a book from a shelf in the cloakroom and saw the chocolate-covered donut. And the chocolate-covered donut saw her and said, "Don't I look delicious? When was the last time you had a donut?" Nina looked at the mischievous chocolate-covered donut. Suspected a trap, but after all, it was a chocolate-covered donut, and she honestly couldn't remember the last time she had any kind of donut. Nina decided to just touch it, and touch it she did. A little bit of the chocolate icing clung to her finger. Well, what's a girl to do? The icing tasted so chocolatey, sweet, so indescribably... No, Nina thought as she stood there gazing rapturously, she would try to describe it, like emptying her stash of candy on Halloween, like her first step in the ocean on a hot day, like the time her dad gave her a $1 bill that would be spent on 10-cent ice cream cones for all her sisters at the store across the pike. She thought another tiny swipe of icing, that little drip that went into the hole of the donut, wouldn't be missed. Alas, the camel's nose was under the tent. And the next moment, so was the rest of the woolly-haired, big-teeth-spitting beast. Before she knew it, Nina was sitting on the floor with the cloakroom around her, eating Patty's chocolate-covered donut. She was floating on a cloud in a wrinkle of time, ecstasy and enchantment, choirs of angels and chocolate. It may have been Beethoven's Ode to Joy playing lightly in the background as she savored nibble after nibble. It was unknown how long her sojourn in the land of sweets lasted. Noises in the classroom woke her from her reverie. It was gone. The chocolate-covered donut had disappeared. Nina looked at her chocolate-smeared fingers, realized her predicament, wanted to undo what she had done, but she couldn't put it back now. Nina knew she had done the unthinkable, had committed a transgression above all other transgressions. Without permission, Nina had eaten food from someone else's lunch bag, and not just food, but dessert, and not just dessert, but a chocolate-covered donut. Patty had probably been thinking about it all during language arts. Miss Johnson opened the cloakroom door, saw Nina, saw the chocolate-smeared face, the chocolate-smeared fingers, the brown saliva at the edge of her mouth, the startled look, but not the tears that were about to sprout forth like Mount Vesuvius. Nor did the teacher see the sadness and self-disappointment in Nina's heart, the grief of a bad decision, the regret that she betrayed a friend. Get out of there. Get out of there right now. Go wash yourself. You look like Aunt Miss Johnson stopped herself just in time. Nina did as she was told. The room was silent except for the students who shifted in their chairs to get a better look as Nina walked to the sink in the back of the room. Even the faucet was no longer her friend as icy cold water flowed forth and over her hands. Nina didn't want to wait for the water to get warm, didn't want to waste water. She took a paper towel, dried her hands, wiped her face, turned and faced her executioners. She hadn't thought third grade could be worse, but now it would be. Nina knew it was all her own doing. Her own doing that undid her, probably for the rest of the year. Go to your seat. What do you mean by eating a chocolate-covered donut in class? I thought you were in the bathroom. Nina was silent as she took her seat. Nina looked at Patty. Patty didn't have the answer and didn't know how to help her friend. Nina took a sudden interest in the patterned tile on the classroom floor. We're waiting, Nina. Again, that feeling in her stomach, like mice were having a party. Nina looked at her friend again and said, I ate a chocolate-covered donut. Lots of giggles from the students, but not from Patty, who suddenly thought she understood what had happened and why Nina had looked at her so strangely. Patty wanted to shout, You ate my donut! But instead remained silent. Miss Johnson looked around the room for student support in her efforts. And who gave you that donut? Your mother? I can call her on the phone this minute and ask. We don't like thieves in this classroom or in this school, Nina. Nina turned and faced her classmates. Patty suddenly stood up, knocking over her chair and pointing at Nina. Ah, Miss Johnson could feel the satisfaction of a soon-to-be-won victory and set a straight-edge smile. "That was my donut," Patty said. "It was my donut, but I told Nina she could have it because I don't like chocolate." How many more lies was she going to tell? Nina wondered, as she desperately wanted to run across the room and fling her arms around her friend, now her friend for life. Miss Johnson took her hands off her hips, stood straighter, and scolded Nina for eating it before lunchtime. "And you'll stand against the wall at recess," she told Nina. Nina knew her teacher didn't want to keep her in the classroom for lunch or recess because Miss Johnson would have to have stayed with her. Patty righted her chair and sat down. Nina sat down too. Her head, once swimming in a smog of fear, felt gratitude. She turned to look at her friend, Patty, who she knew loved chocolate, but was willing to forgo it in the place of friendship, smiled and shrugged her shoulders slightly. Yes, she was willing to forgo a chocolate-covered donut, at least this one time. The end. Thank you for visiting with us today. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to this podcast and share it with everyone you know. Return next week for another story from Nina's World. This story was written and read by Christine McKee, with gratitude to Dr. Ethel Ratkin of Bucks County Community College for editorial consultation and encouragement. Additional heartfelt support from family, friends, and members of my writing groups. Technical support was provided by Mr. Dan Tarrant of Personally Catholic. Sound engineering by Mr. Andrew Kimlock of AK Productions. May you embrace peace in your heart, in your home, and in your world.